Pops put this on me about 8 years ago. Sitting around having breakfast with him and Mama Grace, he said, son, when I die, I want you to do my eulogy. I said, Pops, you may see dirt thrown in my face before I see it thrown in yours. And Mama Grace said, well, Clem, he don't want to hear you talk like that. I said, well, Pops, if that's what you want, I'll do it. Man, but it's tough, it's tough. But the Lord is able. The Lord is able. The Lord is able. The Lord is able. But we don't stand to worry your patience today. There's a passage of scripture that reminds me so much of Pops. So much of it found in 2 Corinthians chapter 12.
All right, let's see.
2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 8 through 10. In it you will find these words that are written. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me.
All right.
And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecution, in distress for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Amen. From these passages of scripture, we want to talk briefly from the subject, how to get past what you can't get over. Brothers and sisters, Pops has lived a long life, a life of longevity, a life that has had many ups and many downs, a life that has been full of laughter, a life that has been full of love, yet a life that has been full of tears. Amen. He loved his family. He loved his community. He loved his work. He loved to hunt. He showed the love that he had for all of us when you sit down and talk to him. He began to give you words of encouragement. He will give you instructions. But yet I believe he loves us so much he will even give us criticism. He was the type of man that when you sat into his presence, he will always tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. And he will always share his opinion with you, whether you ask for it or not. There was many times we had conversations and he felt a certain way and he would share it with me. And that was his opinion. It wasn't the gospel. But I will always have to go back to the scripture and remind him what the word of God says. Mama Grace would sit over there in her chair. She just smiled. And he would sit over in his chair. He would say, yes, okay, son. I hear you, son. But my brothers and sisters, Pop's love. He loved his family. He loved his community. He loved hunt. He loved fishing. He loved the outdoors activity. And it was evidence of his life. Yes, Pops loved to laugh. Pop laughed and he had good times with his brothers. He had good times with his sisters. Always had good times with the people around him. Yes, anytime you sat down and talked with him, he began to tell you a story. And sometimes he will begin to laugh before he can get the story out. And you understand, my brothers and sisters, if you're going to live in this life, you have to learn to love people. You have to learn to laugh. Not only that, my brothers and sisters, Pops lived. He lived life to the fullest. He did most of everything that he set out to do. Anything that he wanted to do, he put his hands to it. And he did it to the best of his ability. And one thing about Pops, because he loved to live and because he loved individuals and because he loved to laugh, anytime that he saw you doing something, Pops was somewhat of a master at his craft. He was a master at his craft because anytime you set out to do something, he always had more knowledge than you. He always could tell you what you was doing wrong. And I know sometimes Uncle Frank got tired of him telling him what he was doing wrong. And I asked Uncle Frank, well, what did you do? He said, well, I learned to ignore Pops. Because as long as I answered him, he would wear me out. Well, my brothers and sisters, Pop was that kind of person. Well, my brothers and sisters, as I think about the Apostle Paul was a man of God, and the Apostle Paul found himself going to persecute the church because he loved the law more than he loved the Lord. In other words, church, he was caught up under the law. He was caught up trying to live according to the laws of Moses and the Sanhedrin Council. But the problem that Paul had is that because he loved the law, he hadn't had an encounter with the Lord. And you understand, my brothers and sisters, when we think about the Lord and we think about the law, Jesus said, I didn't come to destroy the law, but I come that the law may be fulfilled. And Paul had to have this experience personally on his road to Damascus. The text says he was going to persecute the church, and in his mind he thought that what he was doing was right. And I want to let you know, church, sometimes we think in life what we're doing is right. You know, there's a way that seems right to man, but it leads to utterly destruction. There's always something somebody can tell us. But Paul had to have an encounter with Christ, and when Christ had an encounter with Paul, he turned his life around. Just like Daddy Clem. Daddy Clem told me he had been in the church all of his life, and ever since I've been in the church, he has been a part of this church. Yes, it was Pops that was a superintendent of Sunday school, as Deacon Lewis has said. But Pops, being a superintendent of Sunday school, he asked me, he said, son, I need for you to be this assistant superintendent. I was a little nervous when he asked me to do it, but I did it because he asked me to do it, and he had to see something in me to ask me to become assistant superintendent. Yes, but I watched him, and I watched him as a deacon, and I watched him in the church, and I would watch him carry on devotion, and he would sing the song Amazing Grace. And he would say, I can't sing, but I can do the best that I can. You see, church, we can learn from that church. What we can learn is that you can't count yourself out. Only thing God wants you to do is the best that you can. When you give God your best, then God will take that best and catapult it into something higher. Well, my brothers and sisters, Paul had ministries that flourished. He had ministries that had ups and downs because he preached Jesus Christ and him crucified. But Paul had got to a point in his life where God had began to show him great things. God began to open the heavens, the third heavens, and allow him to see things that were unspeakable. But God, being in his all-wise providence, because of who he was, he realized because Paul was yet still in the flesh, he said, I had to give him a thorn in his flesh. I had to do something to Paul to keep his mouth closed. You see, church, if God allows us to get away with so much, we'll tell everything that we know. So God has to put a thorn in our flesh. Yeah, he has to put a thorn in our flesh to hold us back, to keep us down, and to keep us on our face. Paul had a thorn in his flesh. In other words, this thorn became pain unto him. And I realize, my brothers and sisters, when we think about this pain that Paul had, first of all, he had to recognize that he had a problem. In church, we all have to recognize when there's a problem in our lives. Yes, Daddy Cliff recognized that he had a problem. And the problem that he had was that he had some pain in his body. And I would tell him, I said, well, Pop, it's a blessing to get old. You 93 years old. A whole lot of people didn't live to see 93 years old. He said it's a blessing, but it's painful to get old. Yes, my brothers and sisters, Paul had a pain in his thorn in his flesh. And this thorn that was in his flesh caused him to recognize that he had to concentrate on the Lord. Yes, this thorn, the text suggests in verse number 8 that it pushed him to pray. You see, church, in order for you to get over what you can't get past, you have to be pushed to pray. Pops was a praying man. Yes, anytime you would go see Pops, before I would leave, he would ask me, son, have prayer with me. And anytime I would go and have breakfast with him, he would always sit down and say, let us bow our head and give thanks unto the Lord. You see, church, if you want to get past what you're going through, you got to learn how to pray. You got to learn how to call on the name of the Lord for yourself. You can't do it on the merits of mom and daddy. You got to have a relationship with God yourself. Pops was a man of great faith, but he realized that he had to be resulted and pushed to pray. Yes, the text suggests also that Paul, he sought the Lord 3 times.
Yes, sir.
He said, if you would remove this thorn from my flesh. And then I can imagine 3 times, but I think about the thorn that Pops had. He had a thorn where he had lost his sight. He could not see. He had a thorn where he was losing his hearing. He could not hear. He had another thorn that he could not breathe. He had to have assistance. So this man was living in a dark, quiet world that he was struggling to breathe. So he had a thorn in his flesh. And he would ask the Lord, Lord, I believe that you have forgotten about me. And I want to let you know today, church, when you have a thorn in your flesh, you got to learn to be patient and wait on the Lord. Papa was patient waiting on the Lord, church. He waited to see the salvation of God. He waited for the glory of God because he knew one day that God was going to come back to get him. Pops realized his power. The text suggests in verse number 9 that the power that he had. He said, my grace is sufficient. He said, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I most gladly would rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. You see, church, anytime you're going through, you got to allow the power of Christ to rest upon you. Pops couldn't go anywhere. He could not do anything. But one thing he had the Spirit of God living on the inside of him. And when you have the Spirit of God living on the inside of you, it makes no difference what you're going through. It makes no difference how you feel in your body. It makes no difference what you can't do. When you have the Spirit of God on the inside of you, he'll take you to higher heights and to deeper depth. When you have the Spirit of God down on the inside of you, it's like a wheel in the middle of the wheel. When you have the Spirit of God on the inside, Jeremiah says, like fire shut up in my bones. Pop had to tell you about the goodness of God. Well, my brothers and sisters, last but not least, the text began to let us know that the text let us know that it was resolved to praise. The Bible let us know that as he resolved to praise, he had to give God praise. Look at what the text says in verse number 10. He said, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches and needs and persecutions, and distress for Christ's sake. He said, for when I am weak, then I am strong. In other words, Paul was simply saying that no matter what I'm going through, yes, I'm going to celebrate Christ and give him praise. I believe Daddy Clem was in his last days. I believe that because he knew that the Lord was coming back for him. He spent a lot of time back there sleeping, and I believe that the Lord was ministering unto him. You see, church, when you need to steal away and get into the presence of God, I believe you can get to the point of allow God to minister unto you. And as God begins to minister to you, I believe that he'll give you the strength that you need in order to get by. And when you have the strength that you need to get by, then you can stand and give God praise and say, God, I stretch my hand to thee. I know the help that I know. If thou wilt withdraw thyself from me, whither shall I go? I remember Pops telling me as we would ride down the road many years ago. As we rode down the road, he would see one house. He said, I bricked that house. And as we kept on going down the road, he said, I bricked that house. And I just do believe, my brothers and sisters, that Pop had laid many bricks down through the years. And I want to let you know, he told me about one brick. He said, this is the chief cornerstone. And the chief cornerstone, when you lay this foundation, the whole foundation is based on this brick. And long as this brick is lined up, as long as this brick is level, then the whole foundation gonna line up, and the whole foundation gonna be level. I come to let you know today, church, that he laid many bricks out, and I'm so glad today, church, he laid bricks down through the years. He laid the brick of love. He laid the brick of laughter. He laid the brick of life. And I want to let you know he had one more brick to lay. And the brick that he had to lay was on Sunday morning. And the final brick that he laid was the final brick to the puzzle, was the final brick to the foundation. And now he has a house in the heavenly realm. And I I heard Jesus say that I go away to prepare a place for you. And if I go away, I'll prepare the place for you. I'll come and receive you unto myself. And I believe, church, he came back early Sunday morning to receive Pops unto himself. So I believe when Pops laid down and he gave up his breath, but I believe when he closed his eyes, he opened them up in glory. And I heard Jesus say, well done, thy good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. Come on up and be ruled over many. That's why we ought to give God praise for the things we can't get past. We got to learn how to pray to get over for what we can't get past. We got to learn how to give God praise to get over the things that we can't get past. We got to stretch our hands unto heaven and say, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Father, I give you praise today, church. Let's give God praise, church, because he's worthy to be praised. Let's give God praise, church, because a life has been lived, a life that has left a legacy of memory, a life that has left a legacy of knowledge and wisdom. I know we're going to miss it, but there's so much around here that he has touched. So many of you that he has spoken to. And I know you wanted more, but you couldn't get more. But you know what he wanted to say. But some things it's best just to be quiet. And Pops knew when it was time to be quiet. He knew when the things that were not meant to be said, he couldn't say. But what needed to be said, he said. And I'm grateful for that, church. I'm grateful for that. He has gone on to be with the Lord. He lived a life that we all should strive to live. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was a life working, striving toward perfection. Striving toward perfection. He'll be the first one to tell you about all his flaws. And he'll say, I don't know why I'm